Admiral Priya Nakamura had been in enough rooms where the air changed to recognize it when it happened again. The air on the bridge of the Thermopylae changed at 0814 hours on a Tuesday, when the Conclave fleet, 14 Veth-class dreadnoughts, 6 Thalian carrier groups, and the flagship of High Arbiter Sovereign Velsarith itself dropped out of transit simultaneously at 40,000 kilometers and lit up every weapon system on their hulls. They did not fire immediately. That was the first thing that told Priya this had been planned for a long time. When people panic, they fire immediately. When people have been waiting for the right moment for years, they pause. They want to see your face when you understand. What is happening, Admiral? That was Commander Yusuf Ose at Tactical. His voice was very level. Conclave fleet is targeting solutions locked on all human vessels in this transit corridor. I count 847 individual weapons locks across our formation. I see them, Priya said. She did. The tactical display was a forest of red, the human fleet. At Kepler Transit 7 was 41 vessels, 8 warships, the rest supply and survey, representing the full forward deployment of Earth's third strategic command. They had been here for 8 months, working alongside the Conclave in the final stages of the Remnant War, hunting down the last hive clusters of the Keth Convergence, a distributed machine consciousness that had been eating stars for 300 years. Humanity had lost 200,000 people in the Remnant War. They had done it because the Conclave asked, and because the Conclave promised, and because Priya and everyone under her command believed that promises meant something. High Arbiter Velsarith appeared on the main screen. The Veth were tall, gray-skinned, four-eyed beings of considerable age and almost total self-certainty. Velsarith had 4,000 years on Priya, by any reasonable estimate, and looked at her the way old mountains look at weather. Admiral Nakamura, Velsarith said. The translation matrix smoothed the clicks and harmonics into something passable. As English, but Priya had been working with Conclave species long enough to hear the original tone underneath. It was not unfriendly. It was the tone of someone delivering a pre-written statement. The Conclave Security Council has concluded, after extensive review, that the continued expansion of human military and civilian infrastructure represents an unacceptable risk to galactic stability. The Remnant War ended 11 days ago, Priya sighed. Yes, the threat is resolved. The arrangement that necessitated human military expansion is therefore also resolved. A pause. All human vessels will power down propulsion and weapon systems immediately. Your colonies at Kepler 9, Proxima Station, and the Tau Ceti habitats will be placed under Conclave administrative protection, pending permanent resettlement. Earth will retain its existing infrastructure, but will accept a Conclave Oversight Commission. You're reclassifying us, Priya said, from allies to a managed population. We are ensuring stability, Velsarith said. The alternative is conflict, for which your species is not equipped. Priya looked at the tactical display. 847 weapons locks. Her fleet had 41 ships, none of them at battle readiness because they had been standing down from a war they thought was over. She looked at the display for exactly 4 seconds. Then she said, Commander Ose, open fleet-wide on the old emergency military frequency, the 1940s one. The one that runs on vacuum tube technology. Ose looked at her. Then he did it. Priya leaned forward. All vessels, this is Nakamura. Do not power down. Emergency protocol Hannibal. Execute. Velsarith's image on the screen sharpened with something that read, even across the species gap, as surprise. Admiral, compliance is not optional. Our weapons are... I know what your weapons are, Priya said. I helped your engineers select the target calibration matrices 3 years ago. I know exactly what they can do and what they cannot do. She reached under the command console and pulled a handle. A very old handle. Purely mechanical. connected to the ship's emergency power bypass, a system installed not by Conclave-adjacent engineers, but by human ones, running on principles that had not changed since the 20th century. The Thermopylae's main drive lit up, not the blue spectrum quantum drive the Conclave had helped them build, the old one. The chemical and magnetic one. The one that ran hot and bright and produced a drive signature. The Conclave's targeting systems had never been calibrated to track, because it was too primitive to bother with. "You have 41 ships," Velsarith said. His voice had changed, not afraid. "Recalculating." "No," Priya said, as the first element of Protocol Hannibal activated across the fleet and 31 additional human vessels that had been running silent in the asteroid field for 6 weeks blinked into sensor range. "We have 72. The other 31 arrived while you were drafting your statement." She cut the channel. "Admiral," said Assay. "Transit window is open. All vessels confirm ready." "Take us through," she said. "Emergency scatter pattern. Nobody goes to the same destination twice." The Thermopylae jumped. 71 other ships jumped. They went in 72 different directions, disappearing into transit corridors the Conclave had built, but humanity had quietly spent 3 years mapping down to individual quantum signature variations. They knew every road, every back road, every road that didn't officially exist because the Conclave had forgotten they built it. Behind them, the Conclave fleet held its 847 weapons. Locks on empty space. The betrayal had been planned for years. So had the answer. Protocol Hannibal had been written 12 years ago by a joint team of Earth's military strategists and civilian engineers, working in a compartment so classified that Priya had not known it existed until she was given flag rank and the access codes that came with it. The name came from a Carthaginian general who had crossed the Alps with war elephants, not because he was supposed to, not because the route made sense on any map that Rome was reading, but because the Romans were not watching the Alps, they were watching the roads. The principle was the same. When the superior force is watching the roads, use the mountains. Priya stood in the central operations bay of Asteroid Station Parallax, a facility that officially did not exist, carved into a nickel-iron asteroid in an uninhabited system that the Conclave's survey data listed as debris field 7 Alpha, of no strategic interest, and looked at the 71 other ships of what was now formally designated the Free Human Fleet. Commander Sarah Reyes, who had been running the Parallax facility for 3 years under the cover of a geological survey mission, met her at the docking bay door with a data tablet and the expression of someone who had been waiting a long time for the day to come. "Status," Priya said. "We have fuel for 6 months of continuous operation. Food synthesizers running at full capacity. Manufacturing bays are fully stocked." Reyes paused. "We've been building things, Admiral, quietly for 3 years, based on a materials list that came from a physics team at Caltech, who were told they were designing mining equipment. And what were they actually designing?" Reyes smiled. It was the smile of someone about to show something they were very proud of. "Come with me." The engineering bay was the size of a small stadium. It should not have fit inside an asteroid of Parallax's dimensions, and it would not have except that the excavation team had been working for 4 years on a project that the Conclave's survey satellites had cataloged as routine resource extraction. What it actually was a weapons fabrication facility based on principles that Earth's physicists had been developing quietly, in parallel with everything they were learning from Conclave technology. For the better part of a decade, the lead item on the fabrication list was called, in the project documentation, a mass driver. This was not a new concept. Humanity had been building mass drivers since the 21st century, using electromagnetic rails to accelerate projectiles to high velocity. The Conclave considered them primitive. They were not wrong. A standard human mass driver, by Conclave weapons metrics, was approximately equivalent to a sharp stick. The parallax mass driver was not a standard human mass driver. The conclave's weapons systems, Reyes explained, standing in front of a device that occupied an entire wall of the bay, are energy-based. Plasma, particle beams, gravitational shear weapons, all of them operate at the speed of light or close to it, which makes them nearly impossible to dodge at combat ranges. Their point defense systems are calibrated for this. They detect incoming energy signatures and respond. The problem, said Dr. Amara Osei, Yusuf's sister Priya noted, apparently the engineering talent ran in families, is that their point defense is calibrated for energy, not for matter. She pulled up a technical diagram. A projectile fired from this mass driver reaches the target at approximately 8% of the speed of light. That is not slow. That is 24,000 kilometers per second. A VEF Dreadnought's point defense laser can destroy an incoming plasma bolt in 0.003 seconds. A plasma bolt travels at light speed. An incoming kinetic slug at 8% C at combat ranges gives the point defense system approximately 0.004 seconds of response time. That's 10 times less, Priya said. Yes, and the point defense laser that works on plasma bolts requires about 800 times less power to destroy plasma than to destroy a solid tungsten carbide slug the size of a refrigerator. Their system is not calibrated for the energy requirements of kinetic intercept at those velocities. At 8% C, a 1 kilogram projectile carries kinetic energy of approximately, Amara paused, roughly 28 terajoules. That is comparable to a small nuclear weapon per kilogram. We can fire 30 of these per minute from a single driver. The room was very quiet. The conclave, Priya said slowly, gave us their weapons technology because they thought it would make us dependent on their energy supply chains. They never imagined we would go backwards instead. They thought backwards was worse, Reyes said. They were not wrong in most contexts. But in this specific context, primitive is exactly what we need. The full command staff of the Free Human Fleet was 73 people representing every surviving human military vessel. They sat in the Parallax Operations Bay in whatever chairs were available, which ranged from proper command chairs to packing crates to one officer who had brought a folding camping chair and was refusing to apologize for it. Priya stood at the front with a display behind her and the full attention of 73 people who had all arrived at the same point through different routes and were waiting to be told what happened next. The conclave has 40 years of data on human military capabilities, she said. They have used that data to build a threat model that is thorough, well-resourced, and completely wrong. She brought up the first slide. It showed a comparison chart. Conclave weapons technology versus documented human military hardware. This is what they think we have. Energy weapons up to Mark 7 plasma grade. Conclave-designed transit drives. Point defense systems based on their sensor architecture. Shields derived from their field physics. She paused. All of this is accurate. All of this is also the visible layer. The layer they were watching. She changed the slide. The new one showed Parallax's fabrication manifest. This is what they do not know we have. Mass drivers operating on electromagnetic rail principles. Technology we invented before we had radio. Chemical explosive warheads designed around organic chemistry that their sensors do not flag as weapon signatures because their sensors are calibrated for energy-based threats. Passive optical tracking systems, telescopes, essentially, that produce zero electromagnetic signature. And materials science derived from 3 decades of studying everything they taught us, extended in directions they did not teach because they did not think we would go there. Captain Hiro Tanaka, commanding the U.S. Perseverance, raised his hand. They still have 40 years of experience with their own systems. They know how to fight a conclave-style war. We know how to fight the last version of that war, not the current one. Correct, Priya said. Which is why we are not going to fight a conclave-style war. She brought up the third slide. It was a map of the conclave's supply infrastructure. Transit corridors, energy collection stations, fabrication hubs, administrative centers. The conclave is a civilization that has had unchallenged military superiority for 60,000 years. When you have unchallenged military superiority for 60,000 years, you stop optimizing for resilience and start optimizing for efficiency. Their supply chains are extraordinarily efficient. They are also single points of failure, because nothing has ever stressed them enough to require redundancy. She highlighted 6 nodes on the map. These 6 installations supply 80% of the antimatter that fuels the conclave's fleet operations. They are not heavily defended because they have never needed to be. They are defended against energy-based attacks, against transit drive incursion, against everything their threat models include. She paused. They are not defended against a mass driver slug fired from 200,000 kilometers by a ship running on chemical propellant with no quantum drive signature. Commander Asay looked at the map. You want to destroy their fuel supply? No, Priya said. Destruction is inefficient. I want to render their fuel supply unreliable. There is a difference. She zoomed in on the first target. Station Solaris 7. Generates antimatter through magnetic confinement of a proton beam. The confinement system requires extraordinarily precise magnetic field calibration. Tolerances measured in nanotesla. A mass driver slug does not need to destroy the station. It needs to create a vibration event in the confinement housing that disrupts the calibration. The station goes into emergency shutdown automatically. It takes 12 weeks to recalibrate at full capacity. You hit 6 stations in 12 weeks and they have no antimatter, Tanaka said. His voice had changed. The skepticism was still there. But it was different now. It was the skepticism of someone who is starting to see the shape of something. 6 stations in 6 weeks, Priya corrected. Different teams, simultaneous if we can manage it. And then we explained to the conclave, very politely, what happened and why, and what will happen to the other 40% of their antimatter supply if they would like to continue the current policy. She looked at the room. We are not trying to win a war, she said. War is expensive and slow. We are trying to demonstrate to the most advanced civilization in this arm of the galaxy that they have fundamentally misunderstood the risk profile of the species they betrayed. The camping chair officer, Commander Yemi Ademi, UE's Resolve, spoke up. And if they don't reconsider? If they decide to simply hunt us down? Priya smiled. It was not a comfortable smile. Then we move to Phase 2, and Phase 2, she said, is the part I really hope they make us use. The slug that hit Solaris 7's magnetic confinement housing was 40 kilograms of tungsten carbide composite, fired from a mass driver aboard the UES Newton at a range of 180,000 kilometers. From the station's perspective, from the perspective of any sensor system the conclave had installed on that installation, nothing happened. There was no energy signature, no quantum drive wake, no plasma discharge, no detectable photon emission of any kind. There was, from the Newton's perspective, a chemical propellant burn lasting 0.4 seconds, invisible to anything not actively looking at the specific chemical compound being combusted, and then silence. And then 74 seconds of waiting. The slug crossed 180,000 kilometers in 74 seconds. It was traveling at roughly 2,400 kilometers per second, about 0.8% of light speed, much slower than the mass drivers could theoretically achieve, but fast enough for the purpose and slow enough to preserve the trajectory precision. The targeting required that it hit the external housing of magnetic confinement ring 7 at a 12-degree angle. chosen specifically because the structural analysis of that section of the housing showed a resonance frequency that would propagate the impact vibration through the entire ring assembly without cracking the outer hull, which would have triggered an immediate automated response, but with enough amplitude to shift the field calibration by approximately 0.003 Tesla. 0.003 Tesla was nothing. 0.003 Tesla, in isolation, was less than the magnetic field of a refrigerator magnet. 0.003 Tesla of deviation from the designed calibration of a proton beam. Antimatter confinement system was an emergency shutdown condition. The emergency shutdown alarm sounded at 0622 station time. The automated systems isolated the confinement chamber and began the 12-week recalibration sequence. The on-duty technicians, VETH engineers, well-trained, thorough, ran every diagnostic in their system. They found no cause, no structural damage, no equipment failure, no hacking attempt, no energy discharge. They found an anomalous vibration event in Ring 7 housing of unknown origin and filed a report describing it as a probable micrometeorite impact of unusual vector. Solaris 7 went offline on the Newton. Commander Reyes marked the first target complete and transmitted a one-word confirmation to Admiral Nakamura on a frequency so old it was listed in communications databases under the category of historical interest. On Lin, 5 other stations received similar visits in the following 8 days. By day 19, the Conclave fleet's antimatter reserves were drawing down at a rate that their logistics modeling classified at first as anomalous, and then as concerning, and then as requiring immediate high-level review. The review determined that 6 antimatter stations had suffered simultaneous emergency shutdowns due to what the maintenance logs describe as anomalous vibration events. No common cause was identified. The statistical probability of 6 independent anomalous failures occurring in the same 2-week period was, according to the Conclave's modeling systems, approximately 1 in 10 to the 14th power. The review committee concluded, after 4 days of analysis, that there was a pattern, that the pattern was intentional, and that whatever was causing it was not in their threat database. It was at this point that Priya transmitted her message. She did not transmit it to the Conclave Security Council. She transmitted it to the full Conclave Assembly, all 47 member species, on every available frequency simultaneously, from a relay network of small automated transmitters that the Newton had deployed across 3 different star systems in the weeks before the operation began. The message was 11 minutes long. It covered what had happened, how it had been done, the physics involved, the remaining capacity of the free human fleet, the location and condition of the remaining 40% of the Conclave's antimatter infrastructure, and a precise technical description of what a mass driver slug traveling at 8% light speed would do to each specific installation if the COFAS driver slug traveling at 8% light speed would do to each specific installation if the cochin of what a mass driver sun if the cause of her slug traveling at 8% light speed would do to each specific installation. Conclave chose to respond millet.